There's more.
Jimmy and Irene Rollins, thanks for coming on Hey Luskos.
Thank you.
Look
guys.
at you go.
Oh my gosh.
In
Thank
a
you for
brand
having
new
me.
studio.
Come on.
We're so
So
excited. You
cool.
guys are here to christen this thing. Should we break something over the
Right?
Should we break a bottle of water over the tip of the desk?
You know?
But all you Luskoteers, thanks for listening. We're really, really, really excited to have this conversation with you guys. Hang out today. It means a lot. We have run in parallel tracks for a long time.
Yeah.
So many people talking about you guys. Of course, I think I remember the day we met, Los Angeles in the gym.
In the gym.
At the hotel.
And you were body shaming me.
Oh.
That is not true. This is factually incorrect.
Hilarious.
I remember we were in a gym that had like a weird boxing video game.
Yes,
Remember
it did.
that? And
Yes,
you
it
were
did.
getting down on that bike.
Yes, I was.
And we were chatting it up. And
Wow.
so it was Zoe Conference.
It was.
Los
When was
Angeles
that?
2017.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's when we first met.
I was 400 pounds.
God, goodness gracious.
Wow.
I mean, you were just sharing that when you
Yeah.
preached at Fresh Life. You said the loss was 120?
Yeah,
150.
150.
Wow.
He's lost 100.
And that's mostly Peloton, you were saying?
Peloton
Yeah.
and eating well.
Mm.
Eating well, you know, like that you can't work out away and getting healthy emotionally. I think
Yeah.
that was probably the biggest,
Totally.
you know, factor in my weight loss journey.
Incredible.
How
It's
many
incredible.
Peloton classes a week?
3 at least.
Okay.
At least 3. I'd like to do more.
Yep.
But walking, I walk too. Like I walk 5 miles in the
He
morning.
lost most weight
Wow.
walking.
Just walking.
And it helped him emotionally.
Yeah.
Walking, talking to God. And literally, that's what's given you the strength to control your portions.
Absolutely.
It started with that time with God in the morning and those walks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been great.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
5 miles per day.
Yeah.
Do you do same routes? Do you mix it up?
No, I'm a same route guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a same
Mm.
route guy, so I know where I'm at, you know, and how much I got left. And it's just me. I have to calculate it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
In your head, it's like, this
incredible.
is the beats.
Absolutely.
I remember learning about like what walking does for you because it does, like you said, it helps you mentally.
Mhm.
But even it was saying something about like older people who just walk consistently. Like
Yeah.
it's just so good for your bones and your
It's great.
everything. And
Mhm.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's no
Yeah.
joke. Okay.
I'm proud of him.
5 miles per day, 3 classes per week.
Yeah.
Are they always live or do you ever have the DVR catalog on Peloton?
I'm the DVR catalog. I'm not the live guy.
Okay,
Because
you're
I don't
not
want to
in
feel like
there.
I'm getting beat. You know, I can pause one
Same.
that's not live.
Yes.
You know, I like to win.
yes.
The
So-
leaderboard, the leaderboard is a little intimidating.
It is.
But do you notice that like in the DVR, you can also see who's in that class with you at the same time?
Yes.
So there's like a competition
Uh-huh.
even in that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
as soon as someone says hello, like you can do a little thing,
Yeah.
they're saying, come get some.
Oh, because they tapped you.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
tapped you.
they high
They
five.
high five me.
Yeah.
I high five them back. And then in my head, I'm like, they're not
It's
beating
on.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They might have high-fived me, but I'm going to make them
Yeah.
eat my dust.
I almost died once because of that. Though.
Oh
Sometimes
my
you
gosh,
outpunt your
it was
coverage.
This is true?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh
and
my
are you headphones or
gosh.
the little TV speaker?
I am headphones guy.
Okay, yeah.
But I have to have the TV on also.
You can
I can't hear it.
something else.
Something else. That's my
Interesting.
ADD.
And what do you put on?
Sports Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
But muted.
Muted.
Okay.
Mhm.
Man, and
Isn't
what
that
do you do to
interesting?
stay so svelte?
Boot
Mm.
camp. I do boot camp.
Berries.
Crofton boot camp.
Oh,
So
It's not berries?
berries.
Isn't it berries boot camp? Isn't that
That is
class?
that is a thing.
That
that a
was a
thing?
thing.
Oh.
Or maybe it still
that
is
not
a
still-
thing.
No,
know.
well,
Okay.
not for me. I've been going to the same boot camp class forever. And when COVID hit, she started doing Zoom, and so I moved to West Palm Beach from Maryland, and now I just do it online 3 days a week,
Wow.
1 hour,
Online boot
strength
camp.
and cardio.
You put it on the TV?
On my laptop,
Gotcha.
and she
Yeah.
kicks my butt for an hour, 3 days a week, 3 times. That's it.
Is there other people involved?
Mhm. So there are people in the gym, and then there are a bunch of us on Zoom.
Man.
People
Wow.
from age 20 to 80
Wow.
I work out with. So you just choose weights as whatever you need, what accommodations you need, and you do your workout.
Wow.
It's great.
Yep.
Okay, well, we could go on like this
incredible.
forever, and maybe we should. But let's back it all up here.
Uh-huh.
I believe, Irene, you're the first person ever to be on this podcast that I know of who's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. That's no
Yeah.
small deal.
No.
Seriously.
I mean, that's
Wow.
a very large deal. How did that happen?
How did
Where
that
did that
happen?
desire to come from?
First of all, Jimmy volunteered me. I
Okay.
am
I did. I'm not doing it. Someone else
not
did.
doing it.
Right?
And I was like, my wife will do it.
Oh my
Irene,
gosh.
Irene would love to do that.
It was
Absolutely.
we were working with World Serve, which is an organization that builds water wells all over remote parts of East Africa. And I was born in East Africa, in Zambia, and we were leading a church together.
Yeah.
And this was Jimmy's way of getting me involved because I didn't want to preach. I didn't want to take a mic back then. And so I climbed the mountain, 19,341 feet.
Wow.
And it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Brutal. But when I was at the top of that mountain, I'll never forget, the Lord literally spoke to me, not in audible words, but to my heart, and said, Irene, when you go back to the US, you think this was hard? Your recovery is going to be even harder. And I didn't really get it then because I was in total denial that I had a problem. But when I got home, he told me another thing too. He said, being the best version of yourself is what I-5 needs, which was our church, because I was so insecure about who I was going to be to the church. And so being the best version of myself and having a healthy marriage and family was the best gift I could give my church.
Wow.
And it didn't register in that moment. It was after I got really sober from alcohol.
Wow.
And well into my sobriety did I really put the dots together and say, oh my gosh, God was with me all along.
So he whispered that to you
Yeah.
before you had hit rock bottom.
Correct.
And that whole journey began.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
To have that like visually in your heart, in your mind before going into it. What a gift.
What a gift.
Gosh.
Okay, we're going to go into all that, but I'm just going to nerd out on the climb itself.
Okay.
Right? I realized the Holy Spirit just fell.
Come
We're all
on,
feeling
right?
all that. You have to prepare, I imagine, for a climb like that. How did you get ready for that?
I pretty much did boot camp. As long as
Okay.
you're strengthening your quads, your main muscle groups, your core, you can do it. I climbed with a 16-year-old and 70-some-year-old people. So,
Gosh.
yeah.
Do you get on stair step? I've heard a lot of people get on stair climbers to get ready.
Stair climbers, that type of thing. As long as you're, from a cardio standpoint, you've done enough fitness and you're, like I said, your large muscle groups.
Yep.
And you're going to lose a
Your
lot of weight up
posterior
there.
chain, all that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How did you climb with like a backpack
Mhm.
before? Did you wear it in simulation?
No, I didn't. I was fine with the backpack just because boot camp, the strength and conditioning and, had me ready. But I think it was more, the preparation for me was more about what to bring on the climb so that when I went through 6 different ecosystems.
Stop it.
So you had to
Yeah, because
be
you're
prepared for
starting
each
in
one.
like, is it Saharan Africa?
No, it was tropical.
Yeah.
Tropical rainforest. No, these monkeys that were around and the banana plantation that I was in, and then it becomes like heather forest, like rocky. Then it becomes desert, and then it's like volcanic ash after that.
And then
Wow.
snow on top.
Snow.
Oh,
and
That's got to be wild.
glaciers.
That's going to be wild.
That is so
Glaciers. I
And
didn't
what's
know there
the
were
view
glaciers at
from
the
the
top of
summit
Africa.
like? What's
Glaciers.
Yeah, okay, wow.
Yep. And you can only be there for like 20 minutes. Anybody who stays up there longer gets altitude sickness and
Gotcha.
you get really sick.
And are you on oxygen at all at any of the camps at
No,
all?
there was 50% less oxygen and the guides had oxygen with them. But, as long as you didn't succumb to the altitude, like everybody's different. So one guy went temporarily blind. He was blind for 2 weeks after.
My goodness.
They rushed him down the mountain. Yeah, but it was
Do you have to decompress coming down?
no,
Only going up.
only going up.
Wow.
Interesting.
So that we would climb for like 4 to 5 hours, rest at base camp, and then we would climb for an hour, come back, and that was acclimating for the next day's climb.
Oh.
So, but that midnight, starting at midnight, and you have bubble guts, like everyone's stomachs.
guts.
That's what I call it. Everyone's stomachs were hurting. It was awful.
Oh.
Like, and so you couldn't really.
When you said
eat.
bubble gut, I actually felt that.
I did too.
Yeah.
Felt a
There's
little
a-
rumble. Felt a little rumble.
There's a feel.
Empathetic?
There's a
It's
feel.
bad.
Empathetic
I was like,
bubble guts?
I've been there. I've been on an airplane. Like,
Uh-huh.
I think I have bubble gut. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. I bought some Gas X as soon as I got to the connection airport.
Yeah.
It's a real problem. But there's some people on airplanes that just feel real liberty just to let that bubble gut out.
They do.
I feel like I will literally die before I fart on an airplane.
Yeah.
The people who just let them go,
Wow.
man,
I can't.
I can't do it.
I do it on purpose and then watch people's reactions.
Oh, I literally can't take it.
I can't do it.
I'm
I
like,
have
it's
too much.
so
I
bad.
have too much integrity. You know what I mean? It's just like
I
it's
don't
not
have
the
any.
right place and time for this behavior.
I don't have
Wow.
any integrity
People just
in that area.
letting them just fly, man.
It's
You're like, dude,
awful.
have some self-respect. You know?
I literally spray essential oils because
Yeah.
I can't take it.
Yeah, it's too much.
Anyway.
Okay, so is there anything you didn't bring that if you had to do it all over again, you would have brought with you?
Better gloves.
Okay.
Oh.
So I would have. I borrowed some gloves because I didn't want to. It was so much money.
No, we were broke.
To
Oh,
to
gotcha.
get
Yeah.
all the equipment, and my fingers were frozen. Even with having warmers in the gloves,
Yeah.
my fingers were frozen.
Oh.
Wow.
And that it was just so painful. So to experience that, and you're trying to focus on, you can only take one step at a time up the mountain, and it's pitch black, and all you can see is your headlight. They put me at the end of the line because I was going too fast. Because in my head, I was like, let me get to the top, let me get to the top.
Oh.
They get to the back because I wasn't listening.
Wow.
The overachiever.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything you brought? You're like, why did I bring this? I don't need all
Nope.
this. Nothing.
Nothing,
You had
because
it down
I
right.
listened to someone who had already done it.
Gotcha.
Mm.
And she told me exactly what to bring, and I did exactly what she said.
Rule
Wow.
follower.
Mhm.
And would
That's it.
you so did you started at midnight, then did you sleep? Like
No,
it was just you started at
you're-
midnight, went up and back.
You're
And when did you come
walking.
back?
That's the summit
So
day.
8 hours. You got there at 8 in the morning and watched the sunrise.
Stop it.
I kid you not.
Did you cry?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, big tears.
Big old crocodile tears. Yeah. Geez.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Watch the sunrise. I mean, I'm trying
And
to
this
take
is
a
your
snack.
country of origin.
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
there's hitting you on a lot of different
Gosh.
levels, right?
Things. And I left things up there too.
Come on.
So, like, I don't know if you remember, but I
Mhm.
left a pencil up there, meaningful to my dad, who was an educator in Africa.
Oh
And
my
that's where he met my
gosh.
mom.
Oh.
And so, yeah, I just had to leave something up there that I could connect with.
That's a lot.
Stunning.
And are you getting updates back home on this all? Are you
Occasionally,
Yeah.
because there's no cell service.
you have a
So
satellite phone?
there was someone that had a phone that
Mhm.
she used occasionally, like the day she summited. But we got a few pictures.
Yeah.
It's not
it
like you can
was-
FaceTime from the top, though,
No.
right?
No, no. But I was it was nerve wracking because she was telling me how hard it was,
Yeah. It was
and I was like
hard.
just praying, and I'm like trying to. I think you were gone. You were gone quite a
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and
Yeah,
so
it's
I
a
was
trek.
I have
Mhm.
kids, so
Yeah.
I was home,
How
wishing I
old were
didn't
the How old
volunteer.
were the kids?
How old were
at
they?
that
They
time?
were in elementary school,
Mhm.
all of them at
Yeah.
the time.
Was there even
Yeah.
FaceTime in 2013?
No.
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 Okay. How'd you two meet?
Well, I was a technical recruiter for a company called Modus, and my boss, we were at University of Maryland. My boss was playing. We were playing pickup basketball one day during lunch, and he said, "There's this girl I'm going to interview," and to be honest with you, he was like, "She's hot," and I was like, "Let me interview her," because I wasn't a manager or anything. So she came to the office to be interviewed, and I interviewed her, and it was a great interview. And I walked out, and I told all my coworkers, "I'm going to marry that girl."
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was in October.
Mhm.
And then October 28th, we went out on our first date. And December, we were engaged.
Wow.
So it was pre-ministry.
Mhm.
I was recruiting her on my team. I was a recruiter.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. I see.
And what year was that?
That was
1998.
1998.
Wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And we're married 6 months later. We don't recommend it. 9 months for meeting till marriage. But
Yeah.
hey, it's the Bible says it's better
It-
to marry than
She
to
couldn't
burn.
keep her hands off me. That's what
So
it was.
we
Which
had
I
to hurry
understand.
up and
You
do
can-
that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and work
Absolutely.
out the rest of the stuff while married. Yeah.
And that's 24 years ago now.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yes.
20, I'm trying to do my math now. 23 plus 2, right?
Yeah.
You guys are 24 years?
24 years.
24 years.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
And you guys now travel the country, travel the world,
Mhm.
speaking on marriage,
Yes.
speaking through 2+1,
Yep.
which is your
Equals
E-
one.
2 equals what?
Dang it. I was so close. 2 equals 1.
Well,
it.
2 plus 1, so they're 2 plus God.
It's
Yeah,
not
we can
right.
work it.
But
I mean,
no,
no.
2 equals
The
1.
name
Yeah.
of the ministry is 2 equals 1.
Yes,
2 equals 1.
which
Yeah,
is amazing.
because
It's a
you're one
great
flesh,
name.
That's
which
it.
is a
Mhm.
very appropriate name.
Come on.
From the
Yeah.
lips of God himself.
That's it.
Come on.
To one flesh. And so where's the origins of all that? Where'd that come from?
Well, I think it came from our story.
Mhm.
We were, someone asked me recently, how long have you guys been married? And I was like, 24 years. Like, when did you fall in love with Irene? You would think it'd say 24. I said, well, about 8 years ago. And, and so the ministry of 2 equals 1 came out of us figuring out our equation to bring our 2 differences, our 2 family of origin differences, our 2 ideologies, and how do we make that into one marriage,
Wow.
without changing one another. And so we're trying to figure out this marriage equation thing. And so 2 equals 1 was, and the 2 shall become one. Which is so
equally crazy people.
Equally crazy people,
who are
equally committed.
Who deserve each other sometimes.
That's
It's
it.
like, yeah,
Come
that's it. That's
on.
marriage. The
Come on.
punishment is equal to the crime. At times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just giving back our story and stewarding our testimony. That's how it originated. And we've been helping leaders and church leaders and people all around the world just try to figure out, every marriage is cited when it doesn't work out, irreconcilable differences.
Right.
And we believe with Christ there are reconcilable differences.
Amen.
And so how do we reconcile our differences while they're still being differences? So that's where it came from.
That's very good.
Life-changing and so helpful. And
Oh,
we
thank
all
you so
need it,
much.
no matter
Yeah.
where
We
we are.
alluded to it a moment ago, but when you on Mount Kilimanjaro, the word you heard, and you were so gracious when you preached at our church and out of the book message you've written, Reframe Your Shame, which came out this past year. You both are first-time authors,
We are.
which is a big deal,
Yeah.
by the way.
That is a
Your
big
book released
deal.
in January.
January.
Yep.
Love
Outside the Lines. Love
Love
Outside the Lines.
You helped me with that
We
title.
talked a little bit about it. It's
Yeah.
a
Nice,
brilliant
babe.
title. Yeah, that's right.
Good. Yes.
And tell us the subtitle of the book.
Beyond the Boundaries of Race, Difference, and Preference.
Very good.
Yeah.
Love Outside the Lines.
Yeah.
Very good.
Love
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, so and then Reframe Your Shame.
Yes.
And this book is a little bit of your story. You have journeyed through addiction and recovery and freedom in Christ
And shame and trauma and all the things. And so I didn't want to write a book that's like a memoir, like, oh, yeah, like I'm so interesting. Everybody's got a story, okay? But here's the deal. I wanted to set this book apart by simply getting super vulnerable and honest about the humanity and the journey behind being a believer, Christian, and struggling with addiction and how to get free and stay free. So putting a taste in people's mouth for what the journey could look like. So for all the people who are skeptical about self-help books, this isn't about self-help.
Yeah.
But there's so much people don't know about ways that the Lord has gifted us with just the ability to get free from things. And we all need different tools.
That's right.
So, it's kind of like an exposure to different tools, and all the therapists and all the psychologists out there are amening me and giving me a high five because they're like, oh, wow, she did the work, put it on paper and is showing people how if they do the same, they can actually get the renewal of the mind that the Bible talks about.
Yes.
Wow.
We'll put
Thank
the
you
link.
for doing the hard
Yes.
work. Oh my
Oh
gosh.
gosh, all the things and being so emotionally naked for us to hear all that and all the things. I mean, that's very, very generous.
Yeah.
We'll put the link to your teaching from Fresh Life into the show notes and
Yeah.
to the YouTube description, all the places, as well as links to both your books, so
Great.
people can
Thank you
listen
so
to
much.
hear
Yes,
and
that'd
get
be
all
great.
they need to.
Yes.
You guys also have a podcast you run together, which is the 2 equals 1 podcast.
Yes.
So now in the 3rd season,
Second season.
second season, 3rd episode.
That's it.
Okay, yeah, there we
Good
go.
job.
All the numbers and not math, not my strong suit. So I'm working on it. But you mentioned something in that teaching that I wanted to come back to, and that is you said you became addicted to alcohol at age 10. How did you come into, access to that as a 10-year-old?
Wow.
So one of our differences is that I am African-American, like for real African-American, because I was born in Africa.
Gotcha.
Wow.
My mom was African and my dad, Caucasian-American, African-American.
Wow.
Jimmy is a Black American, like born and raised here in the U.S.
Wow.
So overseas, culturally, it's acceptable to drink at a young age. And my dad would get these big cases of Guinness, right? And it would be in these bottles. They were bright and beautiful and just, and, one day I asked him, what is Guinness? How come we can't have that? And he said, it's vitamins, honey. Don't worry about it or something like that. In my 10-year-old mind, vitamins.
That's good.
That's good for you. I'm supposed to take vitamins, Miss Rule Follower, right? Start helping myself. They don't know. I'm just helping myself to 1 Guinness a day. So I didn't know, obviously, in my 10-year-old mind that I was altering my brain chemistry. And so it wasn't until I got to rehab and where I met people who their parents put beer in their sippy cups and all kinds of things like that. And you're wondering why they became
Wow.
addicted
And it's how
to
when your
a
brain is
substance.
so plastic and
really.
so
Come on.
malleable
Yep.
and so
Hmm.
looking for anything to find its way in the world, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And so by the time I got to boarding school in my teens, I was in Switzerland where I didn't know of a drinking age. I could just go down the street and buy a 6-pack of Heineken. And I was like, everybody else is doing this drunk thing. And so I would have 4 and everybody else would have 1. So my relationship with alcohol was different from
Wow.
the beginning.
Thus the addiction that you didn't acknowledge or
Correct.
understand. Yeah.
Right.
So my relationship with alcohol and it was intense and always needed more than the average person. And I would say even for you, Jimmy, like you
Mhm.
could probably speak to this better than me, but in your journey, your relationship with food, your life didn't change until you started addressing your relationship with food.
Absolutely.
It's less about the exercise
Absolutely.
and more about the relationship he had with it.
Wow.
And how did that what were the seeds of that in your life or story?
I think growing up and not having much, my parents did the best that they could. And I remember my mom coming home to be with us kids and, one income family, and we didn't have much. And so food became like this reward system. Like when my dad got paid, oh, we can go have Chinese food today, or we can go do this. And it was like food was like a reward for doing well. And then kind of growing up in, African American church, in the expression of church we had, like everything was based around food.
Sure.
And so it's like
Fried
after
chicken on Sundays.
absolutely
Yeah.
after the
My
big thing,
gosh.
we're gonna eat after the
I
big
grew up in
thing.
church where you literally would have offerings in the KFC buckets. You know what I
Right?
mean? So it's like
Exactly.
even that was connected in some way. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
crazy how it programs your mind
Mhm.
to become dependent on the high. So like ministry was a high. And so anytime
Wow.
God moved, anytime there was a good
Mhm.
service, anytime there was a revival service, we were eating afterwards. We were eating before, we were eating in the green room. And so in my mind, I had no idea that that was creating a cycle
Mhm.
of when I felt bad, I needed a reward.
Mm.
When things weren't going well financially, I'm gonna need a reward. To the fact that we would get Chinese food every Friday.
Mhm.
And I remember being in counseling and she's like, let's unpack that. And we begin to unpack that in counseling. And it was my dad got paid on Fridays.
Gotcha.
And literally as an adult, I would crave Chinese food
The
every Friday.
MSG
Isn't that
connected in some
interesting?
Is
small
that
way.
not crazy?
So
Yeah,
I
no, it
bring
makes
that up
sense.
because it's the relationship I had with alcohol that started at 10 and just completely unaware, and so we like to have people, I mention it on purpose when I speak so that
Yeah.
people can consider the origin.
Yeah.
When
That's
is the
so
first
good.
time someone showed you porn?
Yep.
When is the first
Yeah.
time
Yep.
you got
Which
exposed
I can to the day
Mhm.
pretty well lock in exactly what I was seeing, the
Yep,
day, the
me too.
circumstances. Pornography took such a deep stranglehold and chokehold
It's
in my life for a
something
long
in it.
time. Yeah. So to realize, hey, it's not just drugs and
Mhm.
alcohol.
No.
It can be food, it can be purchases, it can be social media, it can be a lot of these
Yeah.
different things.
Absolutely.
But what's interesting, and I don't think I knew for a very long time, that there's a correlation to how young you were when you first started drinking and the level of dependency. That the majority
Mhm.
of alcoholics in this country began drinking before 21,
Wow.
Mhm.
and an even larger portion of those who drank before they were 18 will end up having a different, because like
Alcoholic, yep.
I can have a drink, Jennie can have a drink, and it's not gonna
Correct.
have the same impact that someone who literally can be a switch flipped in the brain
Yes.
where there's not going to be one drink. It's going
There's
to
no
be,
off.
and so even to realize and to understand for our kids, it's not just, hey, don't drink, don't drink. It's understanding, hey, your brain is still very much
Yes.
developing, and to introduce this
It's
highly
great.
addictive substance at this age, it's very similar to even the cannabis and the high
Mhm.
percentage
100%.
THC that kids are vaping nowadays. It's like the studies on those who end up manifesting
Mhm.
schizophrenic-like symptoms in their 30s, they were doing nearly 100% THC in their teens.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so just to realize like what you're doing to your brain and just understanding some of that cause and effect is just,
Mhm.
to me, enlightening and eye-opening to have full awareness of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
You
interesting.
mentioned in your message that you stopped drinking at age 21.
Mhm.
What was What was
She
that?
said it was for babies.
Yeah.
for babies,
Well,
'cause you
I
started
met
having babies.
Jimmy. I met Jesus. I had met Jesus for like 8 months before I met him. I got water baptized. I was still smoking cigarettes, leaving church. I didn't know what
Yeah.
this living for Jesus thing
Yeah.
meant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I met Jimmy, first date, I was like, okay, I got all these questions about God. Like, what do you do? Like, how do you stop drinking? I really like alcohol. I love margaritas. Like, what are we gonna do? Like, my box of wine is in my refrigerator at
Yeah.
home, and my 18 pack of Corona. So he's like, you just kind of make a decision. I mean, like, you don't have to get dunked in water, wearing a white veil,
Yeah.
and because I grew up Catholic, I'm thinking
Mm.
it's some ceremonial thing. He's like, no, it's more of a heart change, and you just lose the desire. And I was like, I was so hungry for the things of God that it literally fell off me.
Wow.
And it started again. I started enjoying the high of having babies. People don't
Gotcha.
realize it. My transfer addiction was
Wow.
Wow.
having children
Wow.
who needed me, and I
Right.
could caretake. I could take care of them. The codependent in me was like,
Yeah.
that's what fed me.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Mind blowing.
it's mind blowing. And so my transfer addiction,
So you had almost a reprieve for a decade.
yes,
Yeah.
100%. And then that wore
Mm.
off. And then when I referenced in my message that I hit 14 and I didn't know what to do with my kids, so that was the trigger point. That was when I went to
Wow.
boarding school, 14.
When you had your oldest hit 14.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do to parent them. I got insecure. I didn't know what to do
Mm.
because that's when I was traumatized because I felt abandoned, dropped off in Switzerland to other people, to my parents. They had gone to boarding school at 14. It was normal.
Yeah.
To me, I took it in the way I framed it. And trauma is subjective. We could all, 6 kids, all go to boarding school, but the way it impacted me
It's different.
was
Right.
abandonment and rejection.
Mm.
So, and then nobody to parent me. So I tried alcohol. I tried a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah, abused it. There was no middle ground. I abused alcohol when it touched my lips. I had a lot of it. till
Meanwhile, though,
21.
the stress of ministry was also kicking in,
Yeah,
right? You guys were leading a
parenting,
church,
yep.
your
Mhm.
parents' church,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. We had taken over our parents' church in 2012,
Mm.
2011, 2012, and the pressures, everything you prayed for. And then we had a Gideon revival. People started leaving because I wanted to change the church and
A
change
Gideon
the
revival.
name.
I got you.
Mm,
Right.
You're
got
going
it.
down. And it took
Right.
me a minute. I was like, that's a good
And
thing.
then it took me a little
Negative.
longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Been there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Gideon
then
revival.
I think even not going through a proper premarital counseling, like we did
Mm.
not have the tools. And so God, here's the crazy thing.
Sounds like you have compassion on yourself back then. No,
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
we did not have the tools. That's a subtle thing.
We
That's
didn't.
powerful.
We
Subtle
did
It
not have
shows
the
powerful.
tools.
you're showing empathy
Yeah.
to your younger self,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we didn't have it. We didn't have the tools. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the support
Yeah.
system to be healthy or make great decisions. There was no church planting organization back there that we knew of.
Right.
Right.
We were the
were
same
just
way. Yeah.
starting a church
Mhm.
and had no idea, how to do
Where
this
God
thing.
guides, God provides. Good
Come
luck.
on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we be careful what you prayed for.
Mhm.
The church grew beyond our capacity to pastor it and to lead it.
Mm.
And our
And we weren't
influence grew too fast.
emotionally
And we weren't emotionally healthy.
and we were completely emotionally unaware.
Unaware.
So that lack of awareness was we were wreaking havoc on ourselves, on
Yeah.
our staff, really. We
Mm.
were poor leaders, I think, as a result. Now, God was blowing up our church in a good way, like salvations and numbers and everything looked good.
Mm.
But I think we were suffering emotionally and that ate away.
Absolutely.
And then you got this powder keg of that latent addiction
Mhm.
ready to blow.
Ready to
Yeah.
blow.
Wow.
So that stress
Mhm.
caused it to kind of like, hey, you mentioned looking to take the edge
Edge
off of a
off,
hard
yeah.
week on
Mhm.
vacation. And it was like,
Mhm.
oh, dang, we're right
Mhm.
back.
Yeah.
Kung Fu, the Matrix thing came back
Mhm.
and all of that. So what was that perspective like for you? Were you aware or were you kind of like, did it take time for you to realize what a dark season she was about to enter into?
No, I was not aware. And I think I was not aware of my own anger issues. I was not aware of my control issues back then. I wasn't aware of just being overly religious and how we were raised. And so rules without relationship equal rebellion. And so it was like, well, you can only have one or you can only have two. And I started establishing these rules.
Almost that Pharisee spirit.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not realizing that I was pushing her to drink more because it was shaming her. And then our fights were cursing and, and then pornography for me and food for me. And so I was completely unaware of the fact that we were just dysfunctional. That was our normal. And so we would just, turn the light switch on and get ready for Sunday.
Yeah.
We
Bring
turn the light
other
switch
people
on
in to do marriage stuff because we didn't feel.
You're like, we're not touching that.
Yeah.
No. And so I think not knowing just, how I was pushing her deeper into the hole, and I was pushing myself into just a place of no return, because the only place I could win is behind a pulpit. The only place I felt secure, the only place I felt validated. And so I started winning at the wrong thing.
Which is a drug in its own way.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And, now we say when you win at the wrong thing, you lose at the right thing.
Gosh.
And for us, we were losing at home. And I never forget Easter 2012. God, moved tremendously. Our church is a year old. 3,000 people come to Easter. 555 salvations.
Wow.
And I hadn't been in our house because I was in a hotel because our fights were so bad. The first time I saw her was that Sunday morning.
Wow.
And after God did all that, I go back to the green room and I just cry my eyes out. And I said, God, why are you using me to help people in the thing that I feel so dysfunctional in? And that's when I finally made a phone call for help.
Yeah.
And I got real and told someone how bad it was. Yeah.
That honesty is a gift that Jimmy has that I've learned from. So I didn't know how to be honest.
Wow.
Like I felt shamed literally when I say it was like somebody had a hand over my mouth. I didn't know how to let that out.
Wow.
How to say a confession. Like I would go in to see a priest when I was Catholic and totally leave out a whole bunch of stuff. Like I just would not admit things.
One of the things that
But I learned that from you, that honesty.
that you asked and that I want to hit on, because not being aware, I perceived that Irene was drinking at me.
Gotcha.
I perceived that she was unhealthy with unhappy with our marriage. I perceived that she was unhappy with my body as being overweight. I perceived that she was unhappy with the way I parented, and being insecure and having my own family of origin issues of not feeling affirmed. She doesn't have the wherewithal to affirm me. And so I'm thinking, I'm rejection. This is rejection.
Wow.
She doesn't want me. I had no idea of the trauma.
Wow.
I had no idea of the abuse. And I took it on as my own, as if I could fix it. If I fix me, I'll fix that.
Right.
And then when I couldn't fix me, I'm just going to fix that.
Right.
And then when I couldn't fix it all, that's when I went down the slippery slope of
I give up.
I give up. Maybe I should just end
walk
my life.
away. Yeah. Oh, wow.
And I think just the dance back and forth of, having a marriage that did not communicate and didn't know the history of one another. And that's when we now land on that our spouse is the blueprint for us discovering our purpose in God.
Wow.
And as we lean into that now, we realize we're trying to help couples. That's why you need to talk. Because when you talk and there's a safe place, you're giving your spouse definition of why you are the way you are so that God can use them to help heal it and reveal it.
Yes. Come on.
Well, that's a lot. And that is very helpful. I wonder when you first started to think, maybe we're going to make it.
Oh, wow.
When did you guys feel that? Because, you're in recovery, you're going through this. You guys are both hitting rock bottom in different ways and on a different trajectory. You didn't think, I'm sure, at a certain point the marriage was going to make it.
No. I wanted Irene to go to rehab so I didn't have baby mama drama. I had already made up in my mind our marriage was over.
Wow.
I had made phone calls to some people, would you hire me? Because I'm not going to be able to be a lead pastor anymore. I literally, my mind had just, it was.
She can come home healthy, but she's not coming home healthy with
me.
Yeah.
Like changing locks, like getting an attorney. And I'll never forget when the counselor said, you can't leave Irene because the new Irene won't have a chance to heal the wounds that the old Irene created. And it was in that same week, a pastor friend called me and just literally confronted me in a very aggressive way. But I'll never forget the words he said. He said, "You will never have the wife you want until you learn to love the wife you have."
Oh, gosh.
And you are a reflection of God's grace. And the faithfulness and grace that you show to her is how she'll see God.
Wow.
And I was like, that's a big responsibility. And it was when she got home from rehab. I'll never forget Christmas Eve picking her up at the airport, BWI airport. And it was in that moment when I saw her hug the kids that the first glimmer of hope that I had that this could possibly work.
Wow.
Because I didn't really, it was rejection.
Wow.
I felt that rejected.
Wow.
I love it because that's exactly what it was. It's like the redemptive power of Jesus became real to me through the way he treated me when I felt so bad about myself. And just even the kids, how they responded to me and celebrated me. Like, that's nothing but the love of Christ that we all have the opportunity to experience, which is why I have to share my story. I have to give it away because, like, I still have the picture at the airport, babe.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never forget it.
So you could tell something was happening in him in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
I said to the
Yeah.
kids in the car, guys, mom's ours to care for. She's ours to love. And in my own shame, in my own disappointment, in my own discouragement, my own fear, I would say probably fear, I kept that to myself for a long time before I shared, because I knew that sharing where I was at was too great of a burden for her to bear. And I wanted her to recover for herself, not for me. And when that
That was
changed
helpful.
through counseling, you know, I always thought that, you know, my wife was, you know, you complete me, you know, and the counselor was like,
Train wreck, aisle five.
you need
Never
to have your
that
own
again.
relationship with God,
Mhm.
you know, and so realizing for me that, you know, I was trying to get her to be my everything, which was a lot of her weight and pressure that she felt. And so
And that can kind of allow you to weaponize their woundedness.
that's it.
As a way of kind of medicating our own insecurities, right?
When the counselor told me
That right
that
there, what he
how
said.
I love her was going to be, that God was going to use how I love her as a reflection of him.
Yeah.
And when I had the definition of abuse and all of the things, the last thing I wanted to do was to represent any of that.
Right.
So now my tone is going to change. Now my first response is going to change because I realize now how I respond is how she thinks God responds.
Yeah.
And so I realize that I am the tangible hands and feet of Jesus on earth to my wife.
Queen.
And that's when things started to turn around.
So powerful. And that's
Praise God.
that story that we're talking about, that day at the airport. How many years ago are we?
8. It was 7 years, 8 months ago.
Wow. So now, all these years later, as you look back at that, can you believe you ever thought that you were ready to be done with this and to see this? I mean, it's like almost like a healed bone that becomes stronger.
Yeah.
Had it not been broken in some ways, right?
I think it was selfish for a while. Like, thank God, like we're better.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
thank God, like our family's
That's
better.
real. That is so real.
And it changed about 5 years ago. I'll never forget the day it changed. And I felt God say, I'm working all of that for a greater purpose. And the call to help other people. Now, my thankfulness, I see all of the couples and all of the faces and all of the people that were suicidal and all of the people,
Getting sober.
pastors that invited us to preach, not to preach because they wanted to talk in the car, and seeing all of those healthy marriages and people discover their purpose and that this pain is going to count for something else. I realize now that's what makes it worth it. It's no longer selfish.
Wow.
Like, we get to experience joy, but God gets to use it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really cool now on this side of it.
Yeah.
It really is cool.
The testimonies, every time I hear of someone getting sober or someone getting encouraged that, oh my gosh, I'm going to come out and like actually share this with my spouse or share this with my pastor, my leader. That is what keeps me going. because then they get the help that they need. Then they're impacting the world. And it's like, oh,
the
my
ripple
gosh.
effects of that.
Yeah. And it's like,
It's
oh,
stunning.
that pain was
Thank
worth
you,
it.
Jesus.
Yes.
Well, Irene, there's not a hand over your mouth anymore.
No.
And your voice is pure and
Oh,
loud and strong.
Thank you.
And
Praise
both of y'all's love and
Yes.
ministry. I mean, we're grateful on behalf of every person, every Lusketeer listening. Thank you for that. It's just a taste. We'll have to have you guys back on. There's lots more we want to ask, lots more we can do together.
Thank you, guys.
But Reframe Your Shame is your book.
Yes.
And Love Outside the Lines, Jimmy. And then the 2=1 podcast.
Yes.
People got to check it out. And you guys have a website. Where can people find more about you?
It's 2=1 spelled out.com.
TWOEQUALS.
I can't spell that good.
ONE.
.com.
That's
it.
right. And we have a book coming out in 2024.
Tell us. Do tell more.
It will be 2=1. So we're gonna
we're
sticking with
it. Your marriage equation of love, laughter, and longevity.
Very good.
Yeah.
Praise God for you guys. Honestly, thank you.
Well, thanks for helping us christen this new podcast space with emotion, with love, with redemption,
absolutely,
with healing, and we can't wait till we have you guys back on. Thanks again.
I love y'all so much. Y'all are family.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to swing by LeviLusko.com and JennieLusko.com to see what's going on in our world.
And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And in the meantime, we would love to connect with you on social media.
Jennie and Levi Lusko.